Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another weekly episode of Everything Vaguely Paranormal. As always, I am Blake Smith, and with me are my partners in the paranormal, Miss Shelley Pruitt, Mr. Ryan Roberts. How are y'all doing?
What's up?
Doing great. Ready for New Year's Eve. Had a fantastic Christmas, and of course, baby girl got everything she wanted, and actually got tired of opening presents.
Of course.
So I did well. She did carry
course.
around all of her little hand-cut reindeer. She just started pulling off the packages like they were playing cards and was passing them out to everybody. So yeah, a lot of fun.
Of course. Ryan, how was yours?
It was fantastic. I spent it with my girlfriend and got some really cool books and had a good time.
Confetti explodes. Ryan's in a relationship.
Yes, I is. You had your chance.
I thought Texas felt a little cold. Hell must have frozen over.
Oh, that's hilarious. God. Well, we're happy for you, Ryan. We're glad.
Thank you, buddy.
Congratulations.
Holidays
Thanks.
with your girlfriend.
Yeah.
I had a fantastic Christmas as well. It went great. Spent it with chosen family and friends and my partner and all that. So got a bunch of fun stuff. And excited, looking forward to New Year's. Can't wait.
Heck yeah.
So I wanted to, before we even jump into this, before I even ask y'all about the white lady in white or the white lady phenomenon, we're going to leave that alone for tonight. But anyways, I wanted to run down because we're ending out 2025, and I want to send out, as we always do, a huge freaking thank you to our listeners, to our viewers, because the results are in, the accolades are in. We are appreciative yet again at the end of 2025 because at the end we have reached a 2025 most shared show, placing us in the top 20% of all podcasts. A 2025 most talked about show, placing us in the top 15%. A 2025 marathon show, meaning that our listeners or viewers have listened or watched 4 or more episodes in a row, placing us in the top 7% of shows. Our audience and listener viewership is all up by almost 1,000%. We have landed worldwide number 20 in the top 100 best paranormal podcasts, number 11 in the top best supernatural podcasts, and number 38 in the top 100 best paranormal podcasts in the United States.
What?
So
Huge
thank you to our audience, whether you watch, rewatch, catch the replay, watch live, comment, share, whatever y'all are
Download
doing.
it. Yeah, whatever you do.
Leaving reviews, all of that stuff. It is greatly helping. We're immensely appreciative of it. We cannot give enough thanks. So we were thoroughly surprised by that, and it is very humbling to see those roll in and to know that y'all are the reason for that. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts for that.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much. What a nice way to end the year whenever we see that wrap up. And that really, the fact that you show up week after week.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And the fact that even if you miss a week, that sometimes we get messages saying, I'm sorry I missed it. I'm going to watch it today. And I got to tell you that means, it means more to us than you guys will ever know, because we do work very hard on it. And our little grassroots with no advertising, it's all been word of mouth. We've turned down sponsorships because we want to tell our stories the way we want to tell them. And we don't want them interrupted by a commercial every 10 minutes. We want you to have a pure, unadulterated experience that keeps you in the moment. And thank you for responding to that. And thank you. I don't know any other way to say thank you. We appreciate you. Thank you so very much.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 110%.
Huge heartfelt. Our hearts grew 3 times larger this year. We'll say that because of y'all. Shelley's unfortunately went 3 times colder, but that's okay.
Yes.
Colder, smaller, and with a much bigger wall than it had.
So back to the topic at hand tonight. Now we're going to kick it off into this week's topic. Obviously, I'm sure y'all know
I'm sorry, Blake.
Yeah, go ahead.
I will be in the comments in just a minute. I am having a very difficult time getting to our site. So if you are commenting already, I apologize. I'm trying to get there.
So big quick shout out. Hey, Amber. Hey, sweet Melissa. Hey, Linda, Doug, all of you who are commenting right now. Shelley will be with y'all momentarily.
I will be there as soon as I find it.
Just go to our page and hit the live, Shelly. This is what happens for the live show, peeps.
Yeah, I know.
Y'all come back week after week, right?
Oh, there it is. Thank you. I
Shelley
would have
and
never found
technology.
that.
Yeah,
The
Shelly and
eternal
technology.
struggle.
That's the only reason why y'all tune in.
I found it.
So-
I found it. Hi.
I know that we know a lot about these ladies in white, or a lady in white, or a white lady phenomenon, however you want to word it. How familiar are y'all with these apparitions?
I had a white lady come into the restaurant last week and try to send
What?
everything back.
Shut up,
So-
Ryan. That's not what we're talking about. God damn it. I knew. Ryan, leave it to Ryan. Ryan's the
See, he
only
comes
one.
back and he starts acting. Anyway,
He comes back.
I mean,
Jail did not do him good.
no.
I
Anyways,
mean,
go ahead.
so I am pretty familiar with the lady in white. It seems like there is a plethora of stories across all cultures and across, I mean, you name it. Every community has like a lady in white story. So
Yeah.
I'm very excited to kind of see where the origins of this is and see if we can
Okay.
kind of get to the bottom of where it came from.
Okay. Shelly, what about you?
I do actually. I have quite a fascination with the Lady in White stories, and we've touched on this a little bit before about how it always seems to be a damsel in distress.
Yeah.
And always it's a male who's rescuing her. So actually, I'm quite fascinated with this phenomena and the origins of it. So yeah, can't wait to get into it and see what you've dug up and come up with.
Okay. Well, cool. Let's well, we're gonna jump right into it then, because I think this is gonna be an interesting discussion at the end of this. So, well, the road you're driving on is familiar, but at night it feels different. The curve along the water comes up slower than you remember, the trees leaning inward just enough to narrow your view. Your headlights sweep across the pavement, then briefly across the shoreline, where the dark water absorbs the light instead of reflecting it. There's no wind, no movement, just the steady hum of tires and the quiet sense that this stretch of road requires your attention. Then something catches the light. At first, it looks like fabric, pale, steel, too bright to belong to the shadows around it. As you get closer, the shape resolves into a woman standing near the edge of the road. She isn't signaling for help. She isn't stepping forward. She's just simply there, maybe facing the water, her white dress visible for only a second before your car passes her by. Your instinct is to keep going. A few seconds later, you check the mirror. The road behind you is empty. No figure, no movement, just darkness closing back in around the curve. Now, stories like this don't announce themselves as legends. They begin as moments people struggle to explain. A woman seen where no one should be, a figure that appears briefly and leaves behind more questions than fear. These encounters happen on quiet roads, near lakes that hold too much history, and along the edges of town where things tend to be overlooked. The details vary, but the image remains the same. A woman in white, silent, and out of place. Some people see her walking, others swear she stood perfectly still. And in certain stories, she asks for a ride. In others, she's already gone before the driver fully understands what they've seen. The explanations change depending on who tells the story and how much time has passed. But what doesn't change is where these encounters happen or how often they return to the same kinds of places. These are not stories that belong to one town or one stretch of road. They surface across the country, separated by distance, but linked by environment. Places where tragedy lingers, places that never seem to fully settle, and places that feel different even when nothing appears to be wrong. And once you start to notice that pattern, it becomes difficult to ignore. Now, before we can understand why the Lady in White appears across so much of the country, we need to be clear about what defines her. She is not a single spirit tied to a single story. Instead, she is a recurring folkloric figure whose form remains stable even as her supposed history shifts from place to place. Now, that consistency is what allows folklorists to recognize her as a type rather than an individual haunting. Now, in American folklore, the Lady in White is almost always described as a woman dressed in pale clothing, most often a long white gown or an old-fashioned dress associated with mourning, marriage, or sleep. Witnesses rarely linger on facial features. Instead, reports emphasize her stillness, her silence, or the way she seems out of place within her surroundings. She appears suddenly, often at night, and vanishes just as abruptly. The focus on these accounts is not who she was, but the impression she leaves behind. And what distinguishes the Lady in White from other ghost traditions is her attachment to specific sites associated with loss. Her presence is rarely random. Folklorist Jan Harold Brumvand, in his studies of American legend patterns, identified many of these figures as belonging to what he described as death site traditions, where the haunting remains anchored to a location shaped by a fatal event or a pattern of tragedy. And Elizabeth Tucker, another contemporary folklorist, expanded on this idea by noting that these apparitions tend to emerge where communities have developed a shared awareness of danger, accident history, or unresolved death. In these cases, the ghost does not drift. She stays where the story began. And when communities attempt to explain why she appears, the narratives that form around her usually involve sudden death. These stories often reference accidents, drownings, disappearances, or violence that occurred nearby, sometimes within living memory and sometimes far enough in the past that the details have blurred. The uncertainty surrounding these events is important. A Lady in White often emerges where there are gaps in knowledge, unanswered questions, or competing versions of what truly happened. The apparition becomes a way to stabilize a story that might otherwise feel unfinished. Now, across American examples, scholars generally recognize three overlapping narrative roles in the Lady in White that the Lady in White can occupy. In some cases, she is a passive presence, seen standing or walking without interacting with anyone who notices her. In others, she becomes a warning figure, appearing in places already known to be dangerous, as if marking them for those who pass through. And in a smaller but well-documented set of legends, she actively engages with travelers, most famously in vanishing hitchhiker accounts, where she accepts assistance before disappearing. Now, these roles do not replace one another. They often coexist within the same local tradition. Now, most American examples fall into one of three broad categories. The first is the roadside Lady in White, a woman often seen along rural highways or near hazardous curves. The second category is the cemetery or borderland apparition, a woman who seems to occupy the transitional space between the town and its dead. She is seen moving near the gates or drifting across the road that runs beside the cemetery. And the third category is tied to water, particularly lakes and reservoirs known for drownings or murky histories. These sightings often involve a woman searching for someone lost to the water or is lost herself, appearing briefly before fading into the surrounding darkness. Now, despite these narrative variations, the Lady in White remains remarkably consistent in tone. She is solemn rather than aggressive. She does not chase, attack, or communicate clearly. And her silence is part of her power. This restraint is one reason her image persists so effectively. The lack of explicit interaction allows the story to adapt while keeping her recognizable. Details can change without breaking the pattern. Now, defining her in this way brings us back to our central question. What creates a Lady in White? If she appears in communities that have no direct connection to one another, then her origin cannot rest in a single biography. Instead, it must be rooted in shared conditions, places shaped by repeated tragedy, locations where loss has left a visible imprint, and environments that demand explanation all contribute to her emergence. The Lady in White becomes the narrative form that allows those places to be remembered. So by clarifying who she is and how she functions within American folklore, we can now examine the environments that most often give her rise to her story. And once we examine those locations more closely, the pattern behind her appearance kind of begins to sharpen a little bit. I want to stop right here because honestly, like when I was doing this research, I found this portion of it very compelling.
Okay.
And we'll talk about it here in just a little bit. But the fact that this is the one, almost to me, ghost tradition, apparition, whatever, that has been so heavily studied. It's almost like your cryptozoologist people or your demonic people. It's like if you look at apparitions, the Lady in White is one of the most well-documented, well-studied, scholarly studied apparitions. So when and finding these types of this type of research where she's broken down so well that there's three different types and three different types of environments that can form a Lady in White.
So would you say she's kind of like the Bigfoot of the apparition world, essentially, like where like everyone has across everywhere has some sort of story and is so looked at under such a such a lens that they are trying to figure out exactly everything that they can about her. Is that so? Is that what you're
Pretty
saying to me?
much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I touch on once we get to the vanishing hitchhiker portion, I touch on what
Right.
they've actually kind of done
Right.
as far as being able to document or trace the documentation of this type of apparition.
Okay.
So, well, if we're looking for places that consistently produce lady in white sightings, roads are impossible to ignore.
Right.
In the American landscape, roads are sites of constant movement, but they are also places where loss occurs suddenly and often without warning. Long before a ghost story forms, many of these roads already carry a reputation. Locals know which stretches are dangerous, etc. They know where accidents happen, where visibility drops, and where the road seems to turn against the driver. Those reputations exist before any apparition is reported. Unlike controlled spaces, roads expose people to risk repeatedly. Every night, new drivers pass through the same curves. Every season brings different conditions. When accidents happen in the same place again and again, the location itself begins to feel unstoppable or unstable. Sorry, unstoppable, unstable. I get them confused too for myself. I'm unstoppable, no, unstable. But anyways, folklorists studying roadside legends have pointed out that these sites often gain stories not because they are mysterious, but because they are familiar. People return to them daily, which allows memory to accumulate instead of fading. And many American lady in white sightings occur on older roadways that were never designed for modern traffic. Narrow lanes, sharp turns, poor lighting, and uneven terrain all contribute to repeated crashes. Go ahead, Ryan.
That is something, now that you mentioned that and ghost lights are also seen along the same areas for whatever reason. And they're always seen as some sort of harbinger, some sort of warning. And it's always 9 times out of 10, especially now, it's roads that are no longer used. So, I mean, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, over time, those incidents blend together in local memory. The details of individual accidents become harder to separate, but the sense that the road is dangerous remains clear. And this is where legend formation begins to take hold. A story provides continuity when facts become fragmented. The lady in white associated with roads is usually encountered in motion. Drivers see her standing on the shoulder, walking along the edge of pavement, or briefly illuminated by headlights before she disappears. These encounters interrupt travel. They happen suddenly and leave little time for interpretation. The figure rarely, if ever, lingers. She appears at the moment when attention is already heightened by darkness, speed, and isolation. And that timing matters. Roads produce sightings that feel abrupt because the environment itself is built around movement. Elizabeth Tucker's work on roadside apparitions emphasizes that these legends frequently arise along routes with documented accident histories. She personally observed that the stories tend to follow the geography closely, appearing at the same curve or stretch of road over decades. And even when the details of the lady's story change, her location remains fixed. This stability suggests that the apparition is shaped by the road's history rather than by any single event. And in many cases, the lady in white becomes a warning without ever speaking. Drivers are told to slow down, to stay alert, or to avoid certain roads at night, not because of posted signs, but because of the story attached to them. The legend reinforces behavior that the environment already demands. The haunting does not replace common sense, it just amplifies it. A dangerous curve becomes more memorable when it has a story, and the lady in white becomes the story's most enduring image. Now, what distinguishes road-based lady in white legends from other forms is their reliance on repetition. One accident does not create a haunting. A pattern does. Each crash, each close call adds weight to that location. And over time, the road stops being just a route and starts being a place where something happens. The apparition gives that sense of inevitability a face. And in these stories, the lady in white does not belong to the driver who sees her. She belongs to the road itself. She appears where motion meets risk and where loss has occurred often enough that it cannot be dismissed as coincidence. So the landscape produces the condition and the story follows. Have y'all ever seen a roadside apparition, lady in white, or anything like that?
No, I've not. Like
I have,
yeah.
and it was, and okay.
Well,
I know Speed Buggy Duggy is in the
mhm.
comments, and he'll be able to tell me what the road is that's coming back from a little town called Bowie, and Bowie is not too far from where I am. And I had traveled up there because my son was participating in something in Bowie, and I was coming back down this road, and I was in the car by myself, and the bus had already gone, so I was way behind the bus, and all of a sudden I see what looks like this kid with a backpack walking down the road. And it's like 10:45, 11 o'clock at night. And so I kind of was like, oh my God, what's this kid doing out here in the middle of nowhere? Pastures, trees, no buildings, no nothing, because it's a long, windy, dark stretch road. And so I hit my brake and I pull over because I'm gonna see if this kid's okay. I pull over to the side of the road, I get out of the car, I turn around, and there's no kid. And I mean, he had on his backpack, he had on a jacket, he had a hat on his head. I saw this kid, and I was so shocked to see what looked like maybe a 10, 12-year old, 12 at the most, walking along the side of the road.
Huh.
Now, whether there's something in there that is something associated with that, thank you, Doug said Highway 59. And I didn't, I saw no child when I pulled over. I literally saw him, hit my brake, pulled over. Because it took a second for my brain to register, but the child wasn't there. But the child couldn't have gone anywhere because there's nothing but open pasture and field. Now, Ryan and I have actually seen
That's right.
an
Yeah.
apparition on the road
Hmm.
when we were driving to
Yeah.
Moundsville to go to
Penitentiary. Yep.
the
West Virginia State Penitentiary.
West Virginia State Pen. Something literally ran from the side of the road, which was a sheer cliff drop down because we were going through the mountains, ran across the road in front of us, a dark figure, and then disappeared into the mountain. And I hit my brakes then too. I was like, what? Because I thought something ran in front of me, but I was like, where the hell did it go? Because it could only run straight into the rock face that we were up against as we wound around the mountainside. I
Right.
have no idea.
And my mom is actually in the comments, and she did remind me we had seen something one time. Me, my mom, and my stepdad were on the way to Harrisburg, which is right next to Concord where they live, going down Highway 49. And we traveled that road so many freaking times and never saw the first semblance of anything like that. Well, one day we're driving down Highway 49 towards Harrisburg, and there's this man just standing on the side of the road, and he looks weird, and we're kind of looking at him, and all of a sudden something flew at our windshield, and we thought like maybe like a bird or something had flown up, but then like my stepdad pulled over and turned around, and that guy was completely gone, and there's nowhere he could have run. It's nothing but wide open fields. You would have seen him running across the field. It was freaking weird. So
I feel like
Yeah.
it was an angry white man apparition and threw his sandwich at y'all. That's what
he
I'm
may,
gonna
he
go
may have, I don't know what he like threw at us, but like he was fucking gone. Like whatever he like, it was almost like he flew at us in the wind. It was freaking weird. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so I actually have this picture, and this is from WFAA in Dallas, Texas. Now, I will go on record and say I have not checked the validity of this. I did find it within a story that they were talking about ladies in white or a white lady phenomenon or anything like that. This was associated with their website. This is not our capture with WFAA. So again, I did not delve into the validity of this, but this is an example of what people are talking about when they see roadside apparitions or a lady in white. It's just your headlights hit it real quick as you pass it, you look back and it is gone. So I found that picture to be relatively kind of compelling. It looks interesting. So I would not stop if I saw something in white on the side of the road.
No.
Sorry. I'm a
I
paranormal
did.
investigator.
No,
I'm
we're
not
good.
stupid.
Because if it was going to get me, it would have got me with the kid. Because that would be the way to get me to stop for it to be a child. An adult, you're out of luck. But a kid, I'm thinking, what in the hell is a kid doing at 11 o'clock at night on this dark road with no houses, no anything anywhere near? What's going on with this kid?
Yeah. Well, while roads produce sightings that interrupt motion, other environments shape a different kind of apparition altogether. In places designed for stillness and remembrance, the lady in white does not appear suddenly. She waits. Cemeteries do not produce lady in white legends in the same way that roads do. Where roads are built for movement, cemeteries are designed for stillness. They are spaces where death is not sudden or disruptive, but acknowledged and contained. Because of that, the apparitions associated with cemeteries behave differently. They do not interrupt, they simply linger. In many American towns, cemeteries sit just outside the everyday flow of life. They are often placed at the edge of residential areas, bordered by woods, fields, or older roads that predate modern development. And this placement does matter. Cemeteries occupy a threshold, close enough to be familiar but separate enough to feel removed. That, quote, in between quality makes them ideal environments for presence based legends, where a figure is seen returning again and again rather than appearing once and vanishing. Lady in white sightings connected to cemeteries tend to be quiet and restrained. Witnesses describe a woman standing near a gate, moving slowly between headstones or lingering along the perimeter. These figures rarely engage directly with anyone who sees them. There is no sense of warning or urgency. Instead, the encounter feels observational, as if the figure belongs to the space and the witness is the one passing through. Union Cemetery in Easton, Connecticut is one of the clearest examples of this pattern in American folklore. Reports of a woman in white have circulated there for decades, often placing her at the boundary between the cemetery and the road that runs alongside it. She is not described as threatening. She does not pursue visitors. She appears briefly and then fades, returning to the same area time after time. What stands out in these accounts is not dramatic action, but repetition. The figure remains fixed on the cemetery as if anchored there. Folklorists who studied cemetery apparitions note that these legends often develop in places where death is visible but unresolved. Graves mark lives that ended, but they do not explain how or why those deaths occurred. In some cases, the identity of the lady in white becomes the subject of speculation. She is described as a bride, a grieving mother, or a woman who never left. These identities shift over time, but the presence remains stable. The story adapts to fill gaps while the location stays constant. Cemeteries also shape how memory operates within a community. They serve as formal spaces of remembrance, but they also collect informal stories. When people walk through them, especially at night, take shortcuts past them, or pass them daily on the way to work, the cemetery becomes part of the lived environment. The lady in white associated with that space feels less like an intrusion and more like an extension of the site's purpose. She embodies the idea that not all departures are complete. And unlike road-based legends, cemetery ladies in white do not function as warnings about danger. Instead, they reinforce the idea of return. These are places where people go to remember, to visit, and to acknowledge those who are gone. A figure who appears there fits that expectation. So she's not out of place. She is exactly where the story says she should be. In this way, cemeteries create a different kind of haunting. The landscape establishes the conditions first. The repeated presence of death, the physical boundary between the living and the dead, and the social role of the space all shape the legend that forms. And memory follows, attaching names and narratives to a figure that the place has already produced. The lady in white who appears in a cemetery isn't passing through, she's just simply returned. And that sense of return, grounded in a space designed to hold memory, explains why these legends endure in such quiet persistence. Now, off script here, going to show y'all one of my favorite captures from Bachelor Grove Cemetery. I think we all know what we're talking about here. If you have not seen this, this has to be one of the best captures of a lady in white at Bachelor Grove Cemetery. It is an amazing freaking capture. And if I remember this correctly, this was developed and scanned from the original negative. So this lady is in the negative of the photo. And she is simply seen sitting on a bench in front of a headstone, whether it's hers or not sure. But anyways, this was captured by Kevin Watson of Illinois Ghost Research Society back in 1991. So we're not talking about your fancy schmancy camera phones or anything like this. This guy was using an actual camera that you had to go develop the film. And all this. This has got to be one of my favorite cemetery captures ever to date.
And if you know anything about photography, if it is on the negative, it is there.
Absolutely.
That and they have, I do not believe that this has ever been debunked. To the best of my
Mm-mm.
knowledge, that no
To
one
my
has ever
knowledge,
been
too.
able to debunk this photo.
Yeah.
And I believe that this gentleman had put it up to pretty much anybody's scrutiny that wanted to take a look at it.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think this is one of the most fascinating, intriguing, and impressive captures that I have ever seen.
Yeah. This is insane capture to me. Other than I've been blown away by 2 photo captures. This one and Shelley, your gunslinger photo.
Thank you.
So I
Looks
put
like we got to take a trip to Bachelor's Grove.
Yeah, I hear that it's hard to get back in there and that it's
That's what I
overran
hear too.
by locals who like to cause chaos. We'll just put it that way, cause chaos. So I might be all right never going.
Well, I'll tell you, as far
I'll
as
go.
cemeteries go, there is a cemetery that, and you know me, I do not investigate cemeteries. I just don't. I figure if they're in a cemetery and they're running around, that's their cemetery. They should be resting in peace. But again, if you're running around in a house, you're fair game, or a hotel, or if you're not in where you're supposed to be, then you're
Yeah.
fair game for me to talk
Yeah.
to. But in general, I do not investigate cemeteries. However, there is a place out near where I am that I have been and investigated, and you have to go down Dark Corner Road
Oh yeah,
to
you
get
showed us
to
that
Oh.
place.
Dark
Uh-huh.
Corner Cemetery. Now, I didn't take y'all
Uh-huh.
back to the cemetery because we were on our way to Vernal, Utah. So, but this, you go down, you wind around, and this is probably one of the creepiest cemeteries ever. And I have been to that cemetery. I've stood in that cemetery, and just standing in it is so incredibly creepy at Dark Corner Cemetery. And I saw something move across the edge of the fence line. Don't know what it was. It was not an animal, I can tell you that, because it moved very slowly. It was a lighter color, and literally this entire cemetery is kind of shaded. So that's what's called Dark Corner. But yeah, I did see something odd that was a lighter shade just kind of move along the edge of the fence line, and then it was gone. So that's, yeah. Again,
Was that during the day
just
or night?
during the day.
Wow.
The only thing that I remember as going to cemetery and investigating wise was actually, Shelley, with you. Ryan, were you there when we went out in East Texas? And I didn't feel bad because my family was buried there, so we're gonna go try and talk to my
No,
family.
that was
the whole
that
thing.
was you and I, Blake.
The little schoolhouse.
No,
I think
no,
Ryan
I
was
was
there
there.
too.
I was
Yeah,
there because remember
yeah.
the guy called me a bastard on the spirit box. He
Yeah,
told me to get off
he
the
did.
porch,
That's
you
right.
bastard.
Yeah, he's like, get
I
off the
was like,
porch, you
okay.
bastard, and told you to go home, didn't he?
He did. Yeah, I remember exactly what you're talking
Yeah.
about. It's right behind that
Yeah.
old schoolhouse. Yep.
Yeah, that was about the only, because it was the cemetery, and then outside the cemetery, outside the fence, there's an old schoolhouse. Well, we were actually going over to the schoolhouse to investigate around the schoolhouse. We weren't investigating the actual cemetery, although I was trying to get my family to talk to me, but that's a whole nother story. They never did. But we got some angry dude that was like, "Get off the porch, you bastard! Go home."
He didn't
that's
like me
all.
for whatever
That's all on
reason. I didn't
camera
do
too.
nothing
It's
to
a
him.
really cool. It's a really funny capture. So, well, cemeteries are places where death is acknowledged and contained, but not all loss leaves behind a marker. Some environments resist that kind of closure entirely. Now, when the lady in white appears near water, the story changes, not because the figure changes, but because the landscape does. Lakes and reservoirs occupy a different position in the American imagination. They are often presented as calm and familiar, yet they conceal depth, cold, and distance beneath the surface. Unlike roads or cemeteries, water does not preserve evidence in a visible way. Objects sink, bodies drift or vanish, timelines become uncertain. When death occurs in or near a lake, the outcome is not always immediately known, and in some cases, it is never fully resolved. That uncertainty shapes the legends that follow. Lady in White sightings near lakes are frequently tied to stories of drowning, disappearance, or incomplete recovery. Witnesses describe figures standing at the water's edge, moving along shorelines at night, or appearing briefly near docks, bridges, or access roads before fading from view. These apparitions are often interpreted as searching rather than lingering. The story suggests someone who has not finished leaving because the ending was never clearly defined. Reservoirs add another layer to this pattern. Many American reservoirs were created by flooding existing towns, roads, and cemeteries, permanently submerging entire communities beneath the waterline. And in these places, loss is not limited to individual deaths. It includes displacement, erased landscapes, and histories that remain physically present but inaccessible. Folklorists and local historians have noted that legends around these bodies of water tend to multiply, especially when accidents or drownings occur after the flooding. So the lake becomes a repository of unresolved stories. And unlike cemetery-based apparitions, water-associated ladies in white are rarely described as fixed to a single spot. Again, they appear along the edges where land and water meet, or near points of transition like bridges and boat ramps. This positioning reflects the nature of the environment itself. Lakes blur boundaries. They obscure what lies beneath and make it difficult to determine whether something truly ends. The apparition mirrors that uncertainty. She is present, but never settled. Ryan, I get a lot of feedback on you. I'm going to mute your mic. In American folklore, these legends often develop in places with a long record of accidents or missing person cases. Over time, individual incidents merge into a broader narrative about the lake itself. People begin to speak of it as dangerous, cursed, or restless, and the Lady in White becomes a way to give shape to that reputation. She's not blamed for the deaths. She's evidence of them. What separates water-based Lady in White legends from those tied to roads or cemeteries is the absence of finality. Roads are sites of interruption. Cemeteries are sites of return. Lakes, by contrast, are places where outcomes remain unclear. The body may never be found, and the cause may never be confirmed. Memory fills the gaps left by uncertainty, and the apparition becomes the most visible expression of that process. And in these stories, the Lady in White does not warn or watch over a boundary. She marks a place where something was taken and not fully given back. The landscape establishes the uncertainty first, and the legend follows, shaped by unanswered questions and the uneasy knowledge that some places refuse to close their stories. Now, before we delve too much further in discussion on this, because I know that we all are well aware of a certain Lady in White that is associated with a body of water, but she falls under our next category of Lady in Whites. But how many times have we said on this podcast, doesn't it seem like every lake or body of water has some type of Lady in White associated with her? She really does. Because I know that there's a few up here where I've moved to that I've heard about. We know there's some in Texas, plenty in Texas. But not only that, with the bridges and everything, what is it, Donkey Lady Bridge? Ryan, isn't that down there by you or near San Antonio or something like that?
The Donkey Lady Bridge?
The Donkey Lady Bridge?
That's in San Antonio, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So down in San Antonio. And then I know of at least 2 more bridges that have ladies in whites associated with them. So this one intrigues me. The water one always intrigues me. Why does it always seem like some of them where like drownings and vanishings happen or mysterious things happen at these bridges, that it's always a lady in white that returns? That's what gets me. Somebody said La Llorona.
I was going to say, because
La Llorona, yes. But we covered La Llorona.
She is technically a lady in the water, yeah.
She is technically a lady in white, yes.
She wasn't a lady of the river, though. Didn't she drown the children in the river?
Well, yeah, she did, but I would
She's often spotted in white, though, isn't she?
She is spotted in white. Yes, it's because her grieving. Allegedly, some say she either killed herself in a wedding dress, or I can't remember the exact research I did on her, but killed herself in the wedding dress. She's mourning the death of her children that she killed. Obviously, we know that to be part of the legend. That's why she's wandering around. But yes, she is most often seen in white. So La Llorona is an interesting one where it's almost like a crossover,
right?
Where she like becomes this warning, as well as this
as a malignant entity as well.
Yeah. It's almost like she walked. Well, thanks to the Hollywood movie, she now kind of walks a demonic aspect to her.
Yeah.
But she, I guess you could classify her, yes, absolutely, as a lady in white, 100%. Somebody said Stagecoach Road in Marshall has a lady in white sighting as well.
I believe that's correct.
Did not know that.
No, Blake, we did. Remember, we were told to come out there, and I think whenever everybody went, we weren't able to go. But
yeah,
I've been down on Stagecoach Road. And
well, I know you have, but I grew up in East Texas, like 45 minutes from Stagecoach Road, and I have never heard that Stagecoach Road had a lady in white sighting. That is interesting. I have heard all kinds of other stuff about Stagecoach Road.
Right.
So for those who don't know, fill y'all in just real quick. It is a road in Marshall, Texas, that if you go down, it's still dirt road. And on each side, there is probably like 6 foot tall mud bank side, whatever, where they dug the road in that the stagecoaches used to go down. It's supposed to be super haunted. I do know that there is a lot of people down there that like to mess with people who come down there by hurling things at your car, things like that. I've had friends go down there and have handprints on their cars, but this is the first time, I'm not gonna lie, that I've heard that a lady in white has been sighted on that road.
Well, I mean, it makes sense to me, but we can talk about that when we start discussing it later. So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now up to this point, the lady in white has been rooted to specific places. She stands along roads, lingers in cemeteries, or appears near water where something is taken and never fully returned. But the vanishing hitchhiker legend marks a very drastic shift. Here, the lady in white does not remain at the edge of the landscape. She steps into the journey itself. Vanishing hitchhiker stories follow a familiar structure. A driver encounters a woman alone at night, often dressed in white. She asks for a ride or simply appears already inside the vehicle. The conversation is minimal or polite, sometimes non-existent. At some point during the drive, she disappears. And in many versions, the driver later learns that the woman died years earlier along the same route. And what matters most is not the revelation, but the consistency. The story unfolds the same way across states, decades, and communities. And folklorists noticed this repetition early. The vanishing hitchhiker became one of the few modern legend types so consistent that it was formally classified and numbered in folklore indexes. This was not done for novelty. It was done because the story appeared again and again with only minor variations. Scholars recognized that they were not dealing with isolated ghost tales, but with a structured legend tied to specific conditions. Mm-hmm. The fact that it was cataloged at all signals just how persistent this pattern is in American storytelling. That brief detour into classification matters because it tells us something very important. The vanishing hitchhiker is not random. It emerges under predictable circumstances. Late night travel, isolated roads, routes with known accident histories, and places where movement intersects with memory. When the hitchhiker is described as a woman in white, the legend aligns directly with the broader lady in white phenomenon, but with one crucial difference. The version is mobile. Now, one of the strongest regional examples comes from White Rock Lake in Dallas, Texas.
Yep.
For decades, drivers have reported picking up a young woman in white or light-colored dress along the roads that circle the lake late at night. In many versions of the story, her clothing is described as damp or clinging, as if she had just come from the water. She gives an address, she sits quietly during the drive, and then vanishes from the vehicle without warning. Some accounts include a wet spot left behind on the seat, while others end with the driver visiting the address she provided, only to learn that a woman matching her description drowned in the lake years earlier. As with other vanishing hitchhiker legends, the personal details shift, but the route remains consistent. The story belongs to the lake and the roads that border it, not to a single telling. And what distinguishes the vanishing hitchhiker lady in white from roadside apparitions is not movement alone, but participation. She enters the vehicle and becomes part of the journey. And for a brief time, she shares the enclosed space of the car, which turns the road into something personal. And when she vanishes, the interruption feels intimate rather than distant. The driver is no longer a witness. They are now a participant. And scholars like Broom Van and Linda Day, I believe I'm pronouncing the last name correct, have emphasized that these legends remain tethered to specific routes, not general travel. The hitchhiker does not appear on just any highway. She appears on the same road, the same stretch, and the same approach. And even when she moves, she does not wander. Her disappearance reinforces the idea that she was never traveling forward. She was repeating a path already marked by tragedy. And this version of the Lady in White reveals something critical about how place and memory interact. Road creates risk, lakes create uncertainty, cemeteries create return. The vanishing hitchhiker combines these elements by allowing the apparition to move while still remaining bound to a location. And the journey becomes the site of the haunting at that point. And in these stories, the Lady in White does not warn, linger, or search, she reenacts. Each appearance retraces the same final route over and over as if the story itself is caught in motion. The landscape provides the path, memory supplies the figure, and together they create a legend that feels both dynamic and fixed at the same time. The vanishing hitchhiker is not a departure from the lady in white phenomenon. It is its most mobile expression. And she is no longer waiting at the edge of the road. She is now riding on it. So I know we're going to talk about this one because the lady in white, we've all been there. We've all investigated it. How many times have y'all heard the story? Because we've all been up to DFW. I lived there for 10 years. Shelly, you're still around the DFW area. How many times have you heard the story of the lady in white at White Rock Lake?
Ad nauseum.
Over and over again.
Yeah.
If you just walk into any random place in Dallas and say, is there any place around here that's haunted? You will, number one, always get listed the Lady of White Rock Lake.
Yep.
And everyone knows someone who has had an experience with the Lady of White Rock Lake. So I actually do know someone who swears, as we all do, we all know somebody who swears that he was a participant in this and that he actually didn't get to the address that she asked for, that she did get into the car, that he did see her in the rearview mirror. She did tell him where to go, and that he began to drive, and he glanced back in the rearview mirror to ask her a question. She was no longer there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I believe his next words were he pissed himself and pulled the car over,
I mean,
and that he jumped out,
Uh-huh.
and that he was he was, you know, kind of slapping himself in the face like, did I just go to sleep
Right.
and have a dream? Oh my God, was I asleep while I was driving? Yeah, he had no idea what possibly could have called, as he put it, this hallucination.
Yeah.
Because he was not a believer
No.
in ghosts and that kind of thing. So he thought he must have been doing lucid dreaming while he was driving.
It's
And
awfully
Now-
hard to do.
I find the Lady of White Rock Lake to be a very intriguing subject because, to my knowledge, and all the stories that I've heard about ladies around the lakes and stuff like that, white lady and white phenomenon. God, I couldn't get that out. My brain decided to sputter for a minute.
Have a stroke?
Yeah, I think I did. To my knowledge, it's the only one that I've ever heard a variation of the story where a man and a woman were involved in picking her up. Typically, the only thing that we hear of is a man helping a damsel in distress. The one
Right.
story that I have heard is that a husband and a wife team were driving, and it was the wife that spotted her. However, in this story, just as it is in all the other one, it's the man who decided to stop. So the husband
Right.
decides to stop to help her. So you still get back on track with the damsel in distress type take on it. Have y'all heard of women experiencing these vanishing hitchhikers?
Yes. I was going to say there was a story. The only other time I've ever heard of it, other than White Rock Lake, was a story of Resurrection Mary.
Resurrection Mary? Okay.
Cemetery, yes. And
That
there was
had
a
had
husband
a
and a
female.
wife. Yes.
Yeah.
but
Who
not
picked
a
her
lone
up.
female, right? But not
No,
a
not
lone
a lone
female.
female.
Yeah.
I have never
Yeah.
heard a story of a lone female assisting a female on the side of the road that disappears.
Same.
I have never heard of. Now, if you know
No.
one, put it in the comments. But to my knowledge, it is always seems to be a damsel in distress kind of situation,
Yeah.
which again fascinates me. That it's always you have a male that's actually her rescuer. There may be another female in the car, but again, I've heard of, like Blake, I've heard of one time where it was a couple, a man and a woman.
Mhm.
And again, it's the man who ultimately decides to stop and help the woman. And then Resurrection Mary also has a couple. But usually it's a single man, or there are two men. I've heard it with two men in the car, two brothers in the car
Yeah.
that helped the lady at White Rock Lake. So again, it's that fascinates me. And if you know of a story where there is a female that picks up one of these vanishing hitchhikers, but again, I'm not sure why you would, because women in general don't pick up hitchhikers because we're women and we're alone, and lots of very, very bad things could happen. So I can actually
Sure.
see why there wouldn't be stories of women
Right.
picking up hitchhikers that suddenly vanish out of the back of your car. So
Very true. Yeah.
Be driving along. Bitch, I hope you get help. I ain't stopping.
been like, honey, I'll call somebody for you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cough you on his ear. My saliva decided to meet my lungs for a second. All right. Well, by this point, a pattern should be clear, even if it has not been stated outright. The Lady in White does not emerge because a story needs a setting. The setting comes first and the story follows. Across the cases we've explored, the same process repeats itself over and over. The place becomes associated with tragedy through real events, accidents, deaths, or disappearances. Over time, that association hardens. People begin to speak about the location differently, and so they slow down when passing through it. They warn others. They tell fragments of stories that may not fully agree with one another, but it all points in the same direction, that something happened here. What matters is not precision. In fact, precision often fades very quickly. Dates blur, names change, causes become disputed, but the sense of significance remains intact. Folklorists have long noted that when communities repeatedly return to the same location in their storytelling, the details become less important than the meaning attached to the place itself. The location stops being neutral. It becomes charged. And this is where the lady in white enters the picture, not as a starting point, but as a stabilizing figure. Now we're talking about all of these altogether. She gives form to something that already exists. Instead of dozens of competing explanations, the story condenses into a single image. A simple woman in white, quiet, recognizable, and tied to that place. The figure allows the story to persist even as individual memories fall away. Now, importantly, this process does not require belief in the supernatural. People do not need to agree on whether the lady in white is real. They only need to agree that the place is different. Once that agreement exists, the story becomes a shared reference point. It explains unease. It justifies caution. It gives language to a feeling that might otherwise be dismissed. And this is why the same figure appears in so many unrelated locations. It is not because the lady in white travels. She would be a very busy spirit if she did. It is because the process that creates her is so consistent. When a place accumulates enough of that unresolved history, enough repetition, and enough attention, the story settles into a familiar shape. So the lady in white is not imposed, the lady in white is not imposed on the landscape. She is selected by it. Now, at this stage, the phenomenon is no longer belongs to any single witness or event. It belongs to the place itself. The story circulates because the location continues to generate encounters, questions, and unease. Each retelling reinforces the next, not by adding new information, but by reaffirming that this place is worth remembering. And once a place develops a story, the next question is not why it is remembered, but why it is remembered in such a specific way. Across the United States, the figure emerges again and again as is not vague or monstrous. It's just simply the woman in white. The consistency of that image is not accidental, and it does not require symbolic or mythic explanations to make sense. At the most practical level, a woman in light clothing is visible at night. That's the most practical. Headlights catch that fell fabric more easily than dark silhouettes. White reflects light. It stands out against tree lines, water, pavement, and shadows. Many reported sightings describe the figure appearing suddenly and clearly, even at a distance. That visual clarity helps fix that image in memory. A story that can be seen easily is a story that can be repeated accurately. Cultural familiarity also plays a role. In American storytelling, women in white are already associated with moments of transition. Weddings, mourning rituals, nightwear, and older domestic clothing traditions all place white fabric at the edges of life events. When tragedy involves a young woman, especially one whose life ended abruptly or before it felt complete, white becomes the most intuitive way to describe her. The clothing does not need explanation. It feels appropriate without being explained. There is also a narrative simplicity to the figure. The lady in white does not require elaborate backstory to be recognized. She does not need to speak or act dramatically. Her presence alone communicates loss. That makes her adaptable. As details change from one telling to another, the image remains intact. A complicated figure would fracture under repetition. A simple one survives it. Importantly, this form allows the story to remain restrained. The lady in white is rarely violent. She does not chase or threaten, and her stillness keeps the focus on the place rather than the encounter. The story stays anchored to the environment that produced it. More aggressive apparition would shift attention away from the landscape and towards spectacle. So the lady in white keeps the emphasis where it belongs. This form also avoids finality. A woman in white standing quietly suggests interruption rather than conclusion. She appears as someone paused between states, which fits the kinds of tragedies these places are known for: the sudden accidents, the disappearances, death without clear resolution. The figure does not explain what happened. She signals that something ended too abruptly to settle cleanly. So, taken together, these elements explain why the Lady in White persists as a form without invoking deeper symbolism: visible, familiar, simple, and restrained. So she fits the environments she appears in and the kinds of story those environments generate. When a place needs a figure that can carry memory without overwhelming it, this is the shape that works. So by the time a Lady in White legend is established, it no longer depends on a single witness or a single telling. What keeps it alive is not belief, but usefulness. These stories persist because they continue to do work for the places they belong to. One of the strongest factors is the landscape itself. Many of the locations associated with Ladies in White remain largely unchanged over long periods of times. Roads still curve the same way. Lakes still hold the same depth of danger. Cemeteries remain at the edges of town. So when a place looks the same, it feels the same, and the story attached to it continues to make sense. There is nothing to interrupt it. So local storytelling reinforces this continuity. Excuse me. People do not usually encounter these legends through books or documentaries first. They hear them from friends, family members, or longtime residents. The story is passed along as context rather than entertainment. Be careful on that road. Don't stop there at night. Something happened by that lake years ago. The Lady in White becomes shorthand for a shared understanding about a place. Modern media does not create these legends, but it does help to strengthen it. Television specials, podcasts, local news features, and online forums circulate familiar versions of the story to new audiences. Even when details are dramatized, the core elements remain intact. The location is named, the figure is recognizable, and the outcome is unresolved. Media repetition does not overwrite local versions, it only confirms them. And then, of course, we have tourism and curiosity that also play a role. Once a place becomes known for a Lady in White legend, people seek it out. They drive the road, walk the cemetery, circle the lake. Most see nothing, but the act of visiting reinforces the idea that the location is different. And each retelling, whether personal or secondhand, adds another layer to the story's presence. Importantly, these legends survive even among people who do not consider themselves believers. Skepticism does not erase them. In many cases, it actually strengthens them. When a story is framed as something people claim to have seen rather than something everyone agrees is real, it remains open-ended. That openness allows the legend to circulate without demanding commitment. The Lady in White does not need to be proven. She only needs to be remembered. And over time, the legend becomes part of how a place is described. It appears in casual conversation and warnings and in the way people talk about where not to go after dark. The story persists because it continues to align with lived experiences. Accidents still happen, people still disappear, and the environment continues to produce that unease. As long as the place remains capable of generating those feelings, the story attached to it remains relevant. The Lady in White endures not because she is constantly seen, but because she is constantly referenced. She becomes part of the identity of the landscape, that figure that explains why certain places are approached with caution or curiosity. So the story does not fade because the conditions that support it never fully disappear. So when we talk about a Lady in White, it is tempting to think of her as something created by belief, a figure sustained by attention, a thought given shape by fear, expectation, or imagination. That explanation feels familiar, especially in paranormal conversations, but it does not fully account for what we see here. Now, throughout this episode, the Lady in White has appeared whether belief is present or not. She persists in places where people disagree about her story, question her reality, or encounter the legend only after they have already passed through the landscape she belongs to. That persistence suggests something quieter and more structural than a thought form. The Lady in White does not behave like something summoned by expectation. She behaves like something selected by place. Certain environments accumulate tragedy in ways that never fully resolve. Roads where accidents repeat, cemeteries that mark death without explaining it, lakes that take without returning, routes where the same journey ends the same way over and over and over. These places do not need belief to feel different. They already are. The stories are what comes later, shaped by the condition the landscape provides. So the Lady in White is the form of those stories settled into. not because she is chosen consciously, but because she fits. She is visible without being intrusive, familiar without being specific, present without demanding explanation. She allows a place to be remembered without being fully understood. In that sense, she is not an entity moving through the world. She is a pattern that appears when certain conditions are met, a narrative shape that emerges whenever loss lingers without closure and repetition replaces resolution. So the landscape does not host her, it produces her. So when someone reports seeing a woman in white along a road near a lake or at the edge of the cemetery, the question may not be what she wants or who she was. The better question may be be what that place has been carrying for so long that it required a story to hold it. The lady in white is not wandering. She is not following us. She is awaiting where she belongs, marking the places where tragedy left an imprint deep enough that it never fully faded. And as long as those places remain, the story will remain with them. So that is about all I could find on the lady in white.
Something that I found very interesting in what you were saying, and I had not considered this. You made the comment about how things show up, that we use the color white to mark transitions and things like that. Weddings, that kind of thing. Christenings, the baby gowns are always white. I find that fascinating because I had not really considered that connection. If you think about how angels are depicted, they're usually depicted in white robes as well, as something ethereal, otherworldly. I just thought, oh, you didn't mention angels, and for those that believe in them, great, and for those that don't, it's okay. You've still seen the pictures. I find that fascinating because what if that encounter is actually there to protect you from something? We're just calling it a lady in white.
Lady in white.
Rather than maybe it could be some kind of angelic interference to protect you from something that's going on.
Right. I mean, they're both harbingers. They're both trying to lead you maybe away from something or trying to warn you. So I totally agree. I think that could be a possibility.
But we can say a lady in white because we can identify that. We understand what a lady looks like. We understand the clothing that they are in. So could that be the way that it's presented to us? Perhaps if it's an angelic form, that's truly something, spiritual that's shows it to us in a form that we can understand. And perhaps because like these dangerous curves, these bodies of water that do hold a certain amount of, we should be careful around. What if that is some kind of angelic otherworldly interference saying you have to be careful here, and I have just saved you by making you see me, and you've slowed down, you've stopped, you've paused. What if that's actually a divine intervention protecting us from something?
I can see where you're coming from on that. But when I went into this research, that's a very valid point on that. But when I went into this research about it, like obviously my first place went towards the fact that I thought that ladies in white were more thought form based than anything. But to me, it almost seems like after reading the pattern that emerges, it is all about these locations that have repetition over and over and over and over and over again of things happening. And in a way, I guess you could argue that she is a bit of a thought form.
That's where I'm sitting, honestly.
I don't know. It's hard where it's. Here's what I walk between the two, and I'll try to explain it the best way I can that my brain works. I went with thought form because obviously the more thought that the community puts within, let's say, these roads, this lake, this cemetery, stuff like that, the more probability that there is that a lady in white would appear just based on that amount of energy being directed towards that certain spot. I almost walked into the spot of the theory that she could potentially even be like elemental based if she belongs to the landscape itself. And the stuff that which Shelley would go into kind of your talk of it, where it becomes almost like a guardian in that specific landscape to warn others, to have them slow down, to pay attention to, but neither one of those really fit for me personally, where it's like, Okay, but what about lakes where maybe there are drownings and the bodies were never discovered? Okay, so what are we looking at that point? Are we looking at residual haunting, intelligent haunting? Of course, the vanishing hitchhiker to me sounds intelligent. She's interacting.
Right.
But
You
she's
know?
following a residual pattern. The
Right,
same
but
things
it's
are
over
said.
and
True.
over and over again.
Mhm.
So to me, it's so hard to label her as one thing over the other because she truly fits so many different narratives. But if I had to, I would almost place her in a category of elemental base being tied to the landscape because that's the main thing that's taken away. She doesn't belong to these people that are experiencing her. She belongs to the landscape. So I would almost place her in that elemental type category, although I know that elementals are a completely different type of entity. I get that.
Right.
But that's where my brain goes.
I don't know, man. I'm still on the side of saying it's probably thought form entities. I think that because because the story is always the same, and because people are spreading that legend and people are putting that energy, like we were talking about, like putting that energy out into the environment and putting that energy into that particular location, and even though there's not something may not have happened on that road, if people are telling the legend over and over and over and over and over again, something could manifest itself as a lady in white on that particular road or on that particular lake or wherever.
Right, because you have a collective
Right.
manifestation going, whether it's
Exactly.
conscious or unconscious, intentional or unintentional.
Exactly. And what I was going to say too is that's why it makes sense to me when whoever said earlier that there's a report of a woman in white on the Stagecoach Road.
Mm-hmm.
That is a place where legend and lore we know is rampant. And so if people are telling these stories about the Stagecoach Road, somebody could have started a story about a woman in white, and then that story gets repeated over and over and over again, and now all of a sudden there's a woman in white on the Stagecoach Road. And but at the same time too, you were talking about how like they follow a residual pattern. They do, but if you look into thought form entities, you look at, or tulpas, as people call them, they do become sentient after a while and kind of do their own thing. But I wonder if, when it comes to the lady in white, maybe because she is interacting with people, like there's people talking about picking her up and having
Well, that's
conversations
specifically
with her.
with the White Rock Lake one.
Right, and also with Bachelor's Grove, and also with all these other ones, there's people like there's the vanishing hitchhiker stories and things
But
of that
not
nature.
all interact with the people. Sometimes they're
Right.
just seen.
Right. Not all, but I think that maybe the reason why you have these things that are able to interact with people, even though they are thought forms and maybe have become sentient and do their own thing, maybe they still have to operate within the parameters of the story that's being told. Does that make sense? Like, it can't necessarily, like, it can do what it wants, but it can't necessarily variate outside of the parameters that it's been given. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, but once
Like there's terms and conditions. Is that what you're
yeah, I
saying?
was fixing to say
Kind
now
of.
that doesn't make any sense to me.
That
I
doesn't
think that
make
once
sense to me.
something
Kind of.
gets their own consciousness, I don't think that they're necessarily going to go, oh, well, I have to follow the rule and I have to say this. I think that if they
No,
actually are able
no,
to develop
not-
their own consciousness, that they'll be like, screw you, I'm going to say whatever the hell I want
No.
to say.
Not saying like they can do what they want, but like, say like on road A, there's a woman in white that appears at the third mailbox down road A, right?
Okay.
And people pick her up and drive down the road, and then by the seventh mailbox, they have interactions with this thing, and by the seventh mailbox, she disappears out of the car. Now, those are the parameters within the story between mailbox 3 and mailbox 7. That's where it exists, but it exists in those parameters, but it's able to interact and do what it wants within those parameters.
So at mailbox 8, the magic's gone, is what you're saying?
Could be, but do you see what I'm saying? Like, there are these parameters.
I get what you're saying.
I understand. I think that once it gets a consciousness, though, and
Right.
becomes, I think that those parameters actually, I don't think that they really have to adhere to rules once they get their consciousness.
I don't know. Maybe they do. I don't know how that works.
That's what
They're
happens to a
just
lot of
over
my
here like-
packages.
I was gonna say they're just over here like, yes, I'm sentient now. Fuck, I gotta sign terms and conditions. This is bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Yeah, I mean,
no,
but,
I don't.
like,
I can't. I
don't-
can't.
I can't agree with that either.
I
I
can't
think that
agree with
once
that.
it
I
becomes
can't
conscious
get.
that it's
Yeah, I think it's gonna have its own. It's gonna have its own interpretation of what it can and cannot do, despite the parameters that it's set out. And if it becomes sentient, yeah, I know that tulpas can become sentient at some point. You know, when given enough energy. Or I've heard that. I'm not gonna say I know that, but I've heard that. To me, I don't know. Like the lady in white has me so confused. I get the vanishing hitchhiker. To me, the vanishing hitchhiker is very residual haunting. It's probably tied more or less likely to a drowning, to a disappearance, to a body not being discovered, unresolved death of some sort, or sudden death of some sort, because it's typically seen around lakes, rivers, bridges, reservoirs, stuff like that. There's water typically involved with the vanishing hitchhiker stories because of the wet spot that's typically left in the back of the car. I feel like that is residual of an unresolved death. I feel like that was a lady who was trying to find her way home. She flags down the driver. I need to go to this address. She disappears. That plays again and again and again. She says the same things over again and again and again. That is your pure definition of residual haunting. Is the same repeated steps within a certain area. It's like hearing footsteps at Old Park, or hearing the voices or stuff like that potentially at Yorktown when we go there. Some of that is residual. I don't know. I have to almost go towards and lean towards this idea that these ladies in white who are seen on roads and to warn passengers and stuff like that are almost tied to the land itself, which I get the elementals are more summoned to protect the land. I understand that. But what is it to say that all over time that the repeated, let's say, crashes and fatalities and stuff like that cannot summon its own type of entity as a guardian of sorts, and tie in what Shelley was saying is like, hey, slow down. Hey, pay attention. What's to stop that from happening?
Well,
if thought forms can sign terms and conditions, what's the idea?
So I want to kind of go back to what you said, Blake, about how that they're, especially around lakes, bodies of water, that kind of thing, that it could be a residual haunting. I think it's entirely possible, because there is not a body of water in the world that does not have some kind of death associated with it. Not one.
Yeah.
Not one. There are drowning deaths, shipwrecks, you name it, that are associated with bodies of water. We do know that bodies of water tend to increase hauntings with their motion, their movement for something. We all know that. I'm not so sure that this lady in white that's seen around bodies of water specifically might not be a culmination of those spirits that were perhaps lost in those bodies of water, that perhaps with combined energy are able to form into something that is visible. So why could it not be the manifestation of all those souls into one projected being, one collective being that is able to form because people are talking about it? It's a collective manifestation. So I think that there would absolutely could be residual and an actual haunting of a lake or a body of water. Now, out in fields, on corners, on roads, that I can't tell you. You would have to literally look up fatality, traffic numbers of that particular stretch of road in order to get a good idea if that's legitimately somewhere where a lot of accidents occur. More than likely, it probably is. But every body of water has a drowning associated with it. You can't find one that doesn't.
It's true.
I mean, I don't know. I'm still in the thought form category. I don't know, because you were talking about how they do follow residual things, but even in the residual hauntings, quote unquote, people talk about having these different conversations with this particular entity or doing something different, even though they're repeating the same patterns over and over again. So I really don't know. I really don't know what they could be. I think it could be. It could be. It's not really a black and white thing. I think it could be both and. In this situation, because they all kind of follow different patterns. Really,
Little column A, little column B.
Could be. Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Because we don't know how these things work. We don't know how these things operate. So it could be both and. I don't know. Like,
Well, that's why we talk
this one's
about it, because we
confusing.
don't have a definitive answer. We're just kind of throwing out
Right.
speculation as to what may or may not be going on with this lady in white phenomena that everyone knows about. That there are actually,
Yeah,
you know,
you think
people
about it,
that
yeah.
study this phenomena. And it's not a collective misremembering. It is a collective manifestation, in my opinion. I really do think it is a collective manifestation that, for whatever reason, um, there might have been a legitimate death associated with the area, the land, the body of water from whence the story stems. But it's the talking about it. We know that talking about something breathes energy into it, even with your own thoughts and your own feelings. Good and positive thoughts make you feel better. Negative, positive, negative, thoughts weigh you down. We know that by speaking about things, we breathe life into them. So I'm guessing that because it's talked about, it's shared, it's enjoyed, people love to talk about it.
Hmm.
I think that's why these lady in white stories survive.
Well, yeah, I mean, just the sharing, the folklore aspect of it, of the storytelling aspect of it, is definitely why they survive. Uh, Listen, my final thoughts on it is that no, we're far from understanding exactly what they are. I think the closest one that we are uh, able to slightly understand a bit more is a vanishing hitchhiker, just because that is the one subcategory of the ladies in white that has been indexed, it has been cataloged, it has a type, it has a number to it in these catalogs. And so I think that's the closest one. You know, we're close to kind of figuring out a solid pattern. As for the other ones, I have to go with something that is landscape driven, geography driven. It's something with the land. I don't want to walk the. I mean, I want to walk the line. It says elemental, but I know she's not going to be an elemental because elementals are someone to protect the land. You know, that is more of a native type aspect to it. But I think that there has to be this emergence of some type of energy with the land where it creates some type of manifestation within that said area because of so many repetitive things happening in certain areas. So that's what I'm going to say. It's tied to the land at this point. It's land. It's a land-based entity. That's my final kind of takeaway on it.
All right, Ryan, final thoughts?
I'm still gonna say thought form. It's just everything lines up to me as a thought form entity, and that's what makes sense to me the most. Yeah, especially with the hitchhiker. As far as the ladies of the lake and stuff like that, I don't know, but like I think maybe you could be right, but I think that to me everything just lines up to being a thought form entity.
Ooh, we're disagreeing tonight.
And for me, I actually think that it is a residual haunting. I think that it might be brought have life breathed into it by the storytelling. That's what keeps this entity alive. And I do think that, you have men or women, ghosts that are male or female, and then of course you have animals. But somebody walking along the road in general is going to be a male or female, 50-50 shot as to what you see. And I do think it is perhaps a residual haunting from perhaps one entity that may choose to make its final resting place along a lake or a highway. And perhaps it's there to help you out. And that's my final thought. And so with that, Blake, why don't you tell them everything they need to know?
All right, sounds good. Wow, we all three disagree. Didn't get a collective on that one.
We did a little fighting there in the middle, debating.
Yeah. So wow, for the first time in God knows how many weeks, we're walking away with three different conclusions on that. Nice. I love it. Well, guys, if y'all want to support the show directly, check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/EVP podcast. For just $5 a month, you're going to unlock over 450 Patreon exclusive videos, including the pre and post broadcast, which are the 30 minutes before and the 30 minutes after this live broadcast. So you are getting an additional hour with us each and every single week. Your support from this goes directly back to the show and towards the adventures that we bring you week after week. If you're not sure about joining Patreon, you can try it risk-free with our 7-day free trial. Make sure you stay connected with us, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and many more by searching Everything Vaguely Paranormal and looking for the green sound wave. And remember, you can catch us live every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook and YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our Eventbrite page to be notified when public investigation tickets go on sale. We had our preliminary calendar meeting last night. We do have investigations on the calendar. We will tell y'all that we are going to have about an even run this next year of 9 conventions and 12 public investigations. So if we can get all those on the calendar and confirmed, those tickets are all going to be released at the beginning of the year. So all of y'all who like to plan can plan your trips accordingly. We're not going to wait until the last minute. They're all getting released all at one time or within the same month, at least for the entire year of 2026.
February to December.
So go subscribe to our Eventbrite page to be notified when that buffet of ticket selection goes on sale. Also, don't forget to check out our merch store for all your merch favorites: t-shirt, coffee mug, stickers, pillows, hoodies, and so much more. That link is everything-vaguely-paranormal.creator-spring.com. To make it easier, we have added all of our links to the link tree, which will be on the Everything Vaguely Paranormal Facebook and X profiles Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, as well as in all of our show notes for you audio listeners, or you can search linktr.ee/everything vaguely paranormal. We are grateful for your continued support. Every like, comment, share, and download keeps the adventures alive. So if you have a favorite episode, share it with your friends. One of the easiest things you can do to help out the show and its rankings, wherever you get your audio from, go over there and download it and leave us a review. That is it. If you have a story, comment, or question, or you'd like to be a guest on the show or have us as guest on your show, email us at theevppod@gmail.com. That is THEEVPPOD@gmail.com.
Go like, share, and subscribe to that YouTube channel. Hit that thumbs up or leave a comment to let us know that you were here.
Absolutely. Well, y'all, thank y'all so much for joining us for another weekly episode of Everything Vaguely Paranormal. As always, I am Blake Smith. And for my partners in the paranormal, Miss Shelley Pruitt, Mr. Ryan Roberts, as always, we will see you next Tuesday.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.